Blog Talk Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the longest running Bigfoot podcast on Blog Talk Radio. The original Squatchdetective Radio, featuring your hosts, Steve Coles and Chris Bennett. 3 decades of Bigfoot research, 2 decades of Bigfoot radio. Here we go.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail. All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, in the whole night, this isn't a man.
And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
There are thousands of perfect people whose word would be good on any other subject who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal. And that is a fact.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch Detective Radio for today's date, March 18th, 2018, 3/18/18. I am your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective Steve Coles, along with my co-host. Well, he's up, Adam, and awake and raring to go today. Welcome, Chris Bennett.
Thanks, Steve, man. It's good to be here, and we got a great show planned tonight. And how's things been going for you in New York, man?
Cold. Yeah, it was doing fine
warming
for a while.
up.
And, we got a lot of snow, and then it got cold. Now we're not getting snow. So hopefully spring will spring. That's all we can hope for, and then we'll get our boots on the ground again. I just want to do a little follow-up. I had spoken, I think, a week ago that, we had an encounter report out on the western part of New York State in Erie County. Right, and a couple of my guys went out there, and one is a retired law enforcement guy, and the other guy is actually a zoologist. And yes, cool. I have a zoologist on the team. We kind of keep him anonymous because we don't want to kind of open up to ridicule. He's a professor at a college, so him and the zoologist went out and met with the witness, and absolutely feels that the witness was sincere, which is awesome. Right. I'm just trying to fix this phone because the new droid system does not make it really easy to shut your sounds down anymore. For every reason, it only controls the media buttons. But okay, so that's quieted down. So anyway, no, they actually felt that it's very possible from where it was that it could have happened. We're going to do some follow-up once the snow gets off the ground out there on the western part of the state. And as our guest tonight, who will be Peter Wiemer from the We Want You Cottages and the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, which is the 7th annual one's coming up this year on October 12th and 13th at Camp Oniasa, which is in DeWittville, New York. So it's going to be a wonderful time, and that's going to be over at, I believe, let me pull up the website because I got so many things going on here, because what happened is that Peter actually has some pretty interesting trail cam photos going on with the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot site. So if you go to Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot.com, there is a link to the one set of trail cam photos. Peter just messaged me the other set, so I'm going to take a look at that in a second or two. But we are so psyched. A couple of news bits. We talked last week a little bit about Sasquatch Ontario and how his partner, and we actually played that sound, and we can play that once again for those who didn't hear it. But last week, as we mentioned, Mike Patterson, the guy who runs Sasquatch Ontario, his partner, has basically ratted him out for hoaxing and actually provided a sample of the talking Bigfoot. And it was actually him doing it. So here it is again. It's only a 13-second clip, so listen up. Here's the Sasquatch Ontario hoax.
Can you say I am a good boy?
It would be
I am a good boy.
Can you say I am not real?
I am not real.
Yeah, I am not real. Well, anyway, it got a little worse for the guy because apparently, in her words, his ex-girlfriend kicked him to the curb and is ratting him out now as well as being a liar and a hoaxer.
Oh, no, man. He got busted for being a hoaxer and then kicked out of the old lady's place, man.
Yeah, the guy's having a really bad week.
Yeah, daggone it.
No, it is what it is.
But, I remember hearing some of those tapes they had, recordings they had on Bigfoot, supposedly the talker thing, on YouTube. Yep. And I think I had it up. It started playing, I think, about 2 seconds before I closed it.
Yeah. Nope. Not real. Well, sometimes, he's having a real bad week, but sometimes you reap what you sow. So, there's not much more I can say about that. For those who are wondering, originally we were going to have Seth Breedlove on tonight from Small Town Monsters, and we were getting prepared to talk about all kinds of creatures and cryptids from all over the country and his exploits and his adventures. And as it turns out, he had a death in the family today, so we want to wish Seth our deepest condolences, and his family is in our prayers and thoughts. And we will have him on probably the end of April or the very beginning of May. So I'm going to, he wanted to know when we could reschedule. I told him, don't even think about that right now. Be with your family. Yeah. We'll get you in a week or two, and we'll catch up, and we'll take care of business that way. But we want to wish Seth our prayers. And if you need anything, buddy, we're here for you.
That's right. We're thinking about you, Seth. You hang in there, man.
Yep. So, but tonight we have Peter Wiemer on from Chautauqua. We're going to talk Chautauqua County Bigfoot, and we have some really neat, interesting stuff coming up. So anyway, just the usual announcements. Again, I want to remind everybody that starting in April will be Extreme Paranormal Radio right here on this very same channel, and that'll be Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. It's going to be hosted by Stacy Horton, founder of the Extreme Paranormal Encounter Response Team, and also hosted by Michelle Wagner, the Saratoga Spiritualist. So that'll be coming in April on this channel, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern. So, again, I want to remind everybody, too, is that I will be making an appearance at an evening with Cliff Barrickman. It's going to be in Hadley Farms in Hadley, Massachusetts. That's going to be on March 30th and 31st. And as a program note, we also added Cliff Barrickman will be making an appearance on Squatchdetective Radio on April 15th next month. So that was one of our new additions to the lineup. So we'll have Cliff on again. The last time
we hadn't had Cliff in a long time. Mm-hmm, yeah.
The
that
time
was right before they started the show, wasn't it?
It was just like a couple of days. Just a couple of days before they started
filming. Right, they'd been filming or something, and they hadn't released it yet. And he came on the show before Finding Bigfoot ever was released on TV, or before it premiered anyway.
Do you remember that show, Chris? We were actually at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference when we did that show. Remember that?
I think maybe, I don't remember, man. I don't know if you scheduled it there or we did it on. I thought I was at the house. I don't remember.
No, you were sitting next to me. We were actually. We were at the Ohio Bigfoot. We were at Salt Fork State Park Lodge. It was 2011. Yeah.
Well, all I can remember is Cliff is a heck of a nice guy, man. And even, though I just met him, after I spoke with him for a little while, I felt like I'd known him for years,
Yep, and that's the way he is. And I had the pleasure of being in the field with him a couple of years back. Yeah. And same, and it's just what a wealth of knowledge. So it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun.
Right.
What else? I had one other thing too. Is that this is a little off topic, but I just for the heck of it, a lot of folks know that I also do the paranormal stuff as well. I am actually the co-founder of the Extreme Paranormal Encounter Response Team. I am their demonologist, and I just happened to been waiting for this documentary to come out for a few years. It's called The Demon House, and it was directed, written, and starred in by the Zach Baggins from Ghost Adventures. on the Travel Channel, and it premiered on Friday. Of course, I went home after work, and I actually bought it off of Amazon Prime so I could watch it anywhere on all my devices. And it was very reasonable. It was only $13. I figured, what the heck? And I watched it, and I was pleasantly surprised how realistic of the realism of it, and how he caught a lot of the realism to it. You know, as far as people looking for things moving across the floor and a lot of images, you're not going to find this in it. You're going to find some very interesting stuff, and you're going to see the behaviors of people in these circumstances, which I know from experience dealing with some of that was not is very realistic and very true. So when I saw this, it was like, yeah, this is exactly what happens when a paranormal team deals with a demonic type case. So it's really, really interesting. But getting away from the paranormal, we're going to start talking about something that is not, something that is paranormal, being that it's outside the normal, but it's not a spirit or being. It's a flesh and blood creature. We're going to talk about Bigfoot now. And with that, let's bring our guest on, Mr. Peter Wiemer. Peter, how are you, brother?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm
real
wonderful. Well, that's good to hear. So, again, let me just hit save on your number here. We are going to have another great Bigfoot Expo at Chautauqua Lake. And
yes.
I know you just signed up one of my compadres, so why don't you let folks know out there, you know, the dates, the times, what you're doing, and who the folks are before we get started.
Hey, that'd be great. Hey, the easiest website to go to would be BigfootExpo.com. We pretty much got the final speaker okayed yesterday. Paul Bartholomew from up there at Whitehall, New York, is going to be our speaker. We've invited Paul in the past, and he has not been able to get the time off of work to come out, and so he put in a couple of weeks ago for the week off, and we're real excited. Of course, Paul Bartholomew is going to is in one of Seth Breedlove's movies, Beast of Whitehall. And Seth Breedlove is going to be another one of our speakers. Of course, Doug Waller is going to be back with us this year. He's our Ohio connection, telling stories from southeastern Ohio and events. And Paul Matea is from up by Buffalo, but he also has a farm down near Ripley here in Chautauqua County. And he is he's involved with BFRO, but his real job is he is the computer guru for the Buffalo's diocese. And, or in so many words, that's what he does. And our 7th annual is going to take place October 12th and 13th. October 12th is going to be the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot and Monster Movie Night from 6 p.m. to midnight. We're going to be showing a number of different Bigfoot and monster movies, some of Seth Breedlove's, as well as obviously the Beast of Whitehall. And then on Saturday, we're going to start early this year. The event's going to run from 10 a.m. until 7:30 p.m., and doors open at 9. And we haven't got pre-sale ticket forms on the website yet, but they're going to be $40 for VIP seats, first 5 rows, $25 for adults, $15 for kids 16 and under in advance or the day of the show. And we're going to hopefully, this year we're advertised a nice quarter-page ad in the Chautauqua County Travel Guide. If you go to tourchautauqua.com, they have an online travel guide, and it's page 23, and it talks all about the Bigfoot Expo and our movie I've Seen Bigfoot, which came out of the Expo and the eyewitnesses that came forward.
Cool.
Hey,
Peter.
Cool.
Peter.
Yes, sir.
I think you forgot a
Evo.
speaker.
I forgot to. Well, of course, Steve Coles is coming, and
he forgets me.
Of course, Steve's coming, and Steve's been with us every year except last year because of scheduling, and we're real happy he's coming back. We have quite, a New York State presence here with this year's agenda of speakers. And, of course, there's hundreds of documented sightings in New York, hundreds of documented sightings in Ohio. I put a little CBS News feed link at the top or near the top of BigfootExpo.com, which mentions that there's thousands of Bigfoots in the country. And it's, I personally believe there's probably 24 or maybe a little more here in Chautauqua County.
Yeah.
I believe that their families, because some of the eyewitnesses have seen a baby adolescent, so there's eyewitnesses in Chautauqua County that have seen little Bigfoots, and that leads to mom and dad, maybe one or two little kids, and they can easily hide by themselves on 5,000 acres of lands, and I think Chautauqua County has 33,000 acres of state and public wildlife lands. Plus, there's thousands of acres of forest lands that they don't timber but every 30 years. And, of course, we have gorges here.
And, Peter, that's a good point, too. I mean, but you just pointed out, it takes a little Bigfoot to make a big Bigfoot. They're not
sure
born
does.
8 feet tall.
And it takes two big Bigfoots to make one little Bigfoot.
To make a little one.
That's right. And, it's that CBS News.
Yes, we're being extremely scientific today, folks.
All right.
It's all right. I mean, I know I raised a lot of eyebrows here in Chautauqua County, but I didn't realize when I created the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo back in 2012 that I would become the center of the universe for Bigfoot eyewitnesses to reach out and contact. They contacted me. I'm up to like 35 eyewitnesses from Chautauqua County, 8 from Cattaraugus County, more than a dozen from Warren County, PA, that have reached out to me either in writing or calling or in person, resolving themselves and knowing they've seen a Bigfoot. And I got to believe 99% of them are credible because you can tell in their voice, Steve. It puts goosebumps on the back of my neck sometimes when I repeat some of the stories because that's how it's coming across the telephone.
Yeah. Well, one of the most, a couple of years ago, one of the most impressive stories I've heard was that young lady who was the anthropologist. You remember her, Peter?
Yeah.
And she was trembling as she was recounting her story.
And she's on our movie. And she saw this Bigfoot between Randolph and the Chautauqua County border, which is probably, 20, 30 miles from here, or inside of 30 miles. And she had backed up her car, her headlights hit. And she only saw this for a few seconds, but she saw everything. She saw the long hair hanging from the arm because the arm was outstretched, kind of like going for a handshake. She saw the everything from the top of the head down to the mouth, being like a chimpanzee. But she said she knew that this wasn't a person in a ape suit or a Bigfoot suit because she could see the swirl on the elbow of the hair. And then she mentioned, and it was quite resolving and listening to her when she came because she had reached out to me in several emails before the first expo in 2012 and didn't want to come. And finally she came in 2014, I believe, with Paul Matea and she told us her story.
Yeah.
And because she's an anthropologist and had really a great look at it, it was quite, probably the best. And I tell that when I show that to people at my lectures, because we were fortunate enough, she came to our expo, she had to sign our waiver. We were able to, like every attendee that comes to the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, they have to sign a video release because we hope to use it to educate other people or to help other people see that it's okay to talk about it.
And that was very extremely fortunate that she got a look at this thing. I mean, somebody that's actually a professional and an anthropologist that makes it a living at describing creatures and people. The details and stuff that she gets spotted, that's great.
Well, the whole squirrel in the arm thing and her, saying that it was hair covered, not fur, hair.
Right. Steve's been our MC every year that he's been there because I had to be the MC last year, but I enjoyed it. But Steve's so good with the eyewitnesses, and he gets them to talk out. We were fortunate. We had at the time he was, I think, 15 years old, but he had seen a Bigfoot twice, once when he was 7 and once when he was 14. And he's from Chautauqua County, the county next to us. And I remember
Andrew, wasn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Andrew came with his mom, his grandpa, and himself to the Erie, to the Hamburg Fairgrounds and the Western New York Outdoor Expo, which I do in March, promoting We Want You as a vacation destination. And for 3 years in a row, they had me do a Bigfoot experience show. And Andrew came, and during my 1 hour show, I'd always ask, is there anybody in the crowd that's maybe seen a Bigfoot? And Andrew raised his hand, and he told us his story. I had the microphone right up to his mouth. On the drive home, my wife told me, she said, that was the most believable testimony I've ever heard, she said. And it was because came from a young boy, a boy that didn't know how to lie yet.
So I just want to throw out there real quick. Somebody asked how to want to post questions. If you could just put your questions in caps in the chat room, it'll grab our attention, and we will get to your questions. And just for folks, real quick, if you want to call in, our call-in line is area code 646-668-2982. That's 646-668-2982. And we're here with Peter Wiemer from We Want You Cottages and the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo. And okay, here's a quick question for me, actually. How do you differentiate hair from fur? Well, it's very simple. If you're trained to look at something, hair is long, fine, whereas fur is kind of look at it like a way of looking at a beagle, perhaps a dog. Look at two different separate dogs: a beagle and a Shih Tzu. Shih Tzus have hair, and they grow, and they grow, and they grow, and they tend to get matted and long. And whereas fur tends to be, shorter, not long, more packed together, more condensed. Whereas hair, you kind of can see it kind of like hanging by strands.
That's the thing, Steve. I think it's considered to be the difference would be the density. The length and the density.
Look at a horse. Yeah. The mane is hair, but the body is actually more of a fur. So kind of that's how you really differentiate, and that really differentiates, primates a lot of times from other different types of mammals. Right. Like a bear, it's going to look a lot different than a bear. So.
Shadow says, "Can I get a discount on a cottage?"
Nice. Who said that?
Shadow.
Yeah,
Shadow,
Jeff
nice.
Thomas. Yeah, Jeff.
Of
By
course
the
it
way,
is.
there's just so you know, I believe Shadow is a producer of a guest we're going to have on next month concerning the Back 80. So that's really kind of cool. And he's more than willing to call in on that show and get in on the conversation for that show.
Good.
Anyway,
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Jeff's a great videographer. He is. Filmmaker.
So here's a question I have, Peter, is that out of all the folks that have come to you, which I think is a wonderful thing, and a lot of people don't understand, there's been squawk amongst the community. Oh, this is just a publicity stunt for We Want You, and to me, it helps. It does help promote Peter's business, and I think it should be promoted because he has a wonderful facility. He's got a wonderful pool. I'll tell you that much. He's got a saltwater pool. It's just wonderful. But I know Peter, in talking to these witnesses and how he talks to these witnesses, and he spends time with these folks, that his interest in this whole mystery is genuine. And I just want to say, Peter, thank you for what you've done out there. You've kind of, like you said, you've become a beacon for people to speak to. And a lot of times when we do the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, we get a lot more new encounters. And, people come just to, and then I get up there, or Peter last year got up there, and I always start off with my own Bigfoot encounter just to break the ice, saying, hey, you know what, if people are shy about coming out here, talking about their experiences, let me talk about mine. And that kind of loosens them up a little bit to say, hey, come on, and we've gotten a few very interesting and very good ones out of that whole deal. But, Peter, what is the most interesting one you've heard of?
There's a bunch of good ones, but the one that I tell most often is this young old lady calls me up on a Sunday evening a week before the first Expo back in 2012. She's asking me questions about the upcoming town hall meeting, the upcoming expedition, and the upcoming Expo. Finally, after about 4 minutes, I asked her if she'd seen a Bigfoot. She said, well, 4 of us have. She said it was 1983. We were over near Finley Lake. My husband was driving, and my 2 kids and I were in the back seat of the car. We were only doing 30, 35 miles per hour, she said, and for the life of me, I don't know how we missed not hitting it as it was lumbering across the road. We all saw it from its navel to the top of its head. It had long black hair and was 8 or 9 feet tall. I asked her if she'd be willing to come in for an audio or video testimony, and she said, no, we all wish to remain anonymous. What I didn't realize until they came to the town hall meeting, they didn't testify. They came to the expo, they didn't testify. What I didn't realize until the end of the day of the first expo is that they went from table to table, whispering, rectifying themselves with other eyewitnesses that spoke up or other eyewitnesses that remained anonymous. They got closure after 29 years. 29 years of ridicule, 29 years of not knowing, maybe to go to the Ohio conference a few years earlier. I mean, Ohio's been going on for a long time, but up around here, they still think I'm from Pluto. They still think Bigfoot's ha. And I go, I try to understand why. I understand their rule of thought, but they're, all these folks. When I did a library Bigfoot lecture at the end of August over in Olean, unbeknownst to me, we had the Olean mayor. Olean is over by St. Bonaventure, which made it into the final 64, but didn't. But my sister went to St. Bonaventure, so I've been a St. Bonaventure fan ever since I was a kid. But the Olean mayor was in there, and it was a standing room only. We had to get extra chairs. 85% of them were elderly people. You know, usually a third of them are kids. But it's the elderly people that have experienced Bigfoot, and at the end, the next day, they had a real nice write-up. If you Google Bigfoot Olean Times Herald, you'll read the story about it. And that the mayor, hey, what do you think about this, Mayor? And the mayor said in so many words, you know, there's a lot of things in the woods we don't know about. And he wasn't going to ridicule any of his citizens, especially since they sounded like they knew what they were talking about.
And it was an election year.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. But, you know, he sure sounded like a real straight shooter, and he was, you know, just... And, you know, I think up by where you are and where Paul Bartholomew is, it's been going on for a lot longer than what I've been having here, you know, 7 years before me. And now if people think, hear what I think, I think there's 24 Bigfoots in Chautauqua County. There's enough for 5 or 6 little families, and they hear that now. they just lose it. How many do you think there could be up there in the Adirondacks, Steve? There could be.
I never comment on stuff I can't prove. A lot of times, I mean, I can only guesstimate, but who knows? Because we have flaps of sightings. I mean, there'll be years we really get very little, but then we have years, and the last big one went from about 2004 till about 2008, 2009.
Yeah, but
it was just, you know, there was a lot of sightings.
They got it figured out. They know where to hide. They're in deep up there in the Adirondacks. Christ, you guys have 6 million acres.
Yep, absolutely.
You can fit Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, and probably a lot more inside the Adirondack State Park.
And Shadow just made a comment in the chat saying, I know there was one in the Adirondacks. He was not happy about my presence. And, you know, someday I would like to get Shadow on along with Melissa and Wayne and myself when we shot, which eventually became Monsters and Mysteries Unsolved on Destination America. There was a lot of interesting stuff that went on that Jeff had experienced on his final day. Something had growled at him. And earlier in the day, actually Melissa had seen something like out in the distance, looking like standing right alongside a tree, something dark, and then it just disappeared. And a few hours later, or maybe an hour or so later, Jeff decides to take a walkabout, and he came back and says, well, something just growled at me, and I turned right around and came back. So, very, very interesting area, the Adirondacks, absolutely. And that's my stopping grounds, and it'll probably be less than 60 days before I'm back out there again in the Adirondacks. So, but now, you know, truthfully, Peter, we have so many things opening up on the southwestern side of the state. I can't get into it right now because it's still active, but in private, I will tell you it's very interesting. But
cool.
let's get into a little more interesting stuff as well as.
Well, I got some questions for Peter. Hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
Peter.
Go ahead. Fire away, Chris.
Yeah, Peter. How long do you think you've been interested in Bigfoot? You know, a guesstimation. How many years?
25, 27.
About 20. Wow.
17 years. I've been doing sport travel and outdoor shows for about 27 years in Cleveland.
Right.
I used to do it in Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and for 17 of those years, I was at the same shows, Cleveland and Pittsburgh, as Larry Batson from the Wildlife Educational Services. Larry was and he was instrumental in our first 2 Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expos in 2012 and 2013. And if you Google Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, YouTube, there's a couple of videos with Larry on there. And
okay, cool.
Larry, we were at a 9-day show. Everybody would typically go out to dinner at night. Can you believe this? How much money does it cost to promote a cottage resort? I mean, it costs a lot of money. We do 2 shows back then. Before now, shows are barely able to do 3 days or 4 days. Back then, we did 2 9-day shows, and Larry and I became real great friends. We call them show friends because we're all in the tourism industry. We all go out to dinner at night and laugh and tell stories. And Larry was the Bigfoot aficionado, got me going. I bought his 3 cassette tapes that he had on lectures of Bigfoot.
Oh,
you know what a cassette tape is?
Oh yeah, man, I've had many.
Shoot,
I don't know what an 8-track is.
I know what an 8-track is. I had an 8-track in my Chevelle SS, but Larry and he got me hooked on Bigfoot for those 17 years, and it's been at least, and so when I came up with the idea to create a tourism special event called the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, I reached out to Larry, and he helped me put together the first 2 expos. And
okay.
He was
would you
instrumental.
say Larry kind of sparked your interest in Bigfoot, all them years ago?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
And
sounds like a lot of the guys read a book entitled "Monsters of the North Woods," and there they go, or "The Legend of Bobby Creek."
And you know how Larry repays Peter for giving him a cottage. He puts an alligator in the tub.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Oh no!
And he brings in snakes, rattlesnakes, and he brings
but
them back to his cottage.
Nothing will beat the alligator, though. He goes, I got an alligator in the tub. I'm like, no, you don't. He goes, yeah, come here, take a look. And here's this 4.5-foot baby alligator sitting there. Takes one look at me, and all I hear is this big hiss. I'm like, I'm gone. See you.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That's why there's no alligators up here in New York State. They don't come up this far north.
Yeah.
Jump at Geronimo's. If we had crocodiles or alligators swimming in a lake like they have down in Florida or wherever, nobody would ever water ski in Chautauqua Lake.
Oh, man. Thank God for cold winters.
And let's not forget the tarantula, too, Peter.
I know. He had them all.
He brought the tarantula, too. And we were all holding the tarantula. It was like first time and last time I ever held a tarantula. Ooh.
When you were talking about your sightings at Expo, I've only had one Bigfoot sighting, and that was on December 8th, 2014. At least I truly believe I saw a Bigfoot. I was coming home from getting firewood over by Clymer, and I always drive the same route, coming in and coming back. It takes me right by this swamp. And ever since I created this event, I look when I drive by state lands or swamps. I look to my left. I drive 2 miles per hour. I'm looking to my left. I'm looking across the swamp. I see a dead ringer for a big dead black tree, or a dead ringer of a Sasquatch looking at me with its arms to its side. And the sun was over the back of my truck at an angle, like closer towards the passenger side. This is all I could figure out after I thought about it. I'm looking across the street. I'm going 2 miles per hour. I got my Canon DSLR camera in my hands, in my eye. I'm looking through goldenrods on my side of the road. I can't get a clear picture of it. I get to an opening. It's gone. I pull over right away. I walk up and down that road for an hour looking for the same big dead black tree or a dead ringer of a Sasquatch looking at me. I drove home, dropped my 10,000-pound dump trailer of firewood, picked up my kayak rental, which I have. It's a tandem. Drive back to where I realized the swamp's too frozen over. It's December 8th, 2014. I had to walk down this road 3/4 of a mile, half a mile, before I could even enter the swamp without it going over my boots, walked in half a mile, couldn't make a left, turned around, walked out. This is where it gets ugly. A quarter of a mile from the road, a stick bounces off the inside of my eyeglasses and pokes a stick the size of a toothpick into my left eye. I pull this toothpick out. I'm by myself. I'm a quarter of a mile from the road. I'm literally crawling out of the woods in some of the most excruciating pain that there is on this planet. I call the eye doctor. He keeps saying, "Can you see? Can you see? Can you see?" I said, "Yep." I should have gone in that night. I went in that next morning, first thing, and he put a contact lens on it, and he said the eyeball is the fastest healing organ in your body. It peels like onions, and it hurt like I was on all kinds of pain medicine for 2 nights. I wake up the third morning, and I felt like a new man. I touch it, it twanged. It twanged for up to a year, but now it doesn't twang anymore. It twanged a lot in the beginning if I touched it. But I kid you not, that third morning, it was like night and day. It's unbelievable. And so I don't go into the woods like that by myself anymore. I'm not going to do that and get myself – I'm 60 years old. I can't be gallivanting through the woods and get myself caught in a, God forbid, a coyote trap or something that chops my leg off.
Well, anyway, you got another leg. You just hop out. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went and bought a drone now, but
that's cool.
We know where they're at. We know where they're at. There's so much proof out on the internet. There is so many pictures. There's so many videos. There is so much proof that the only reason, and I can continue to preach this, is that the government won't acknowledge them. They don't acknowledge the mountain lions in Chautauqua County for the same reason. Because if they did, by definition, the Endangered Species Act of 1973 kicks in that President Nixon signed into law, and then they'd have to shut down the woods to timber and hunting and put millions of contractors and millions of banks out of business from writing loans, and let alone the hunting interests. I mean, can you imagine that, Steve? I mean,
yep. I have said that for many a year.
And they've got mountain lions on trail cams in Chautauqua County all over the place. But every time you show it to the DEC, they just
deny.
And just like they do with Bigfoot. And
yep. Exactly. I'll tell you, we've had I've seen trail cam photos from a police officer in Rensselaer County of a mountain lion coming through, and it was the face. It was not, and you could tell it was a mountain lion. There's the teeth. A little domestic cat doesn't have teeth like that.
Right.
And this was from a police officer, and it wasn't publicized. He was just like, "Look at this." He goes, because we had a conversation about Bigfoot, and he wanted to meet me, and he, it was like one of those things. He kind of just flipped. He goes, "Take a look at that." So he goes, "That's why I believe that a Sasquatch could be out there. It's because look, here's a mountain lion that I got off my trail camera." He wasn't looking for any publicity or even knows, but.
Well, it's the thing about the government entities, and I don't know what it is. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but now, we've got a national park not too far away from here, within, another half-hour drive or so, and they had been getting reports of mountain lions seen in the park, and they're like, no. So they never did say anything about it, They never did send out any warning or any notice. And then one morning, the director, the guy that goes in his office, and he's in charge of press releases and all that and running the place, he sees one run out in the parking lot. I think it jumps on the top of a car and, does a leap over a car. And then he put out a little news release saying, actually we may have one, one large cat in the park, and, but it took seeing to believe, Well,
let's get into some of the stuff that that Peter on his sites has some very interesting photos. One is the trail cam photo that has some deer on it. It's like a series of 6 pictures. Peter, you want to describe how you came across those and a little more about it?
Sure. Again, at BigfootExpo.com, just down a little bit from the top of the page, you're going to see a link that says trail cam pictures. When I was doing these Bigfoot experience shows at the Sport Travel and Outdoor shows for 3 years, and again, I've been doing these travel shows for 27 years, and in Hamburg I did it for 20 years. So I wrote them. I said, hey, since I'm going to be there anyways, why don't you hire me to do a Bigfoot show? And for 3 years they did, and I basically put on a 45, 50-minute library kind of tour, explaining the reality, the history, the of Bigfoot. And so these 2 old guys call me up. The one guy calls me up a week before I'm supposed to be at the Hamburg Fairgrounds, says, hey, we got these trail cam pictures. We want to share them with you, and you can do whatever you want with them, Peter. We're going to bring the micro card or the SSD card or whatever they're called to the Erie County Fairgrounds, and we're going to let you take the pictures and just don't use our last name. And I said, of course. And they brought me these pictures. And when you go to this website, when you click on the first picture, it loads it up, and then you can zoom in. And you can zoom in on a little woodchuck or a crow. And then you go through the 6 pictures, and the last picture is 2 Bigfoots in on the left. These guys never even thought about Bigfoot. Now all they want to do is get trail cams and go looking for footprints. They built themselves a little camp to go deer hunting, and they got the deer cams to look at the deer cams or deer. And until they saw these Bigfoots, they probably didn't even believe in them. And they said the one farther to the left is standing inside of a ravine, and they estimated that one was 8 or 9 feet tall, based on the goldenrod and that they're standing in. And it's just cool. I have other pictures on that same webpage from footprints that were taken like 4 miles from my house. I heard over at Hogan's Hut, that's a local bait shop, place where you get your fishing licenses and gas, that from Skip, he's a good friend of mine, and he runs the bait shop. He says, man, I heard about this guy who's got pictures of footprints that he believes belongs to Bigfoot. And and so I keep bird dogging it for about, and finally he tells me who it is. And he worked for this company called Tamcar, which was at the end of Eek Road, E-K-E. And the owner apparently heard a rumbling going on his deck in the middle of the night. He chose not to go. He chose not to go and investigate it because he was probably worried or scared. His employee comes in at 7:30 in the morning and says, hey, what's up with these footprints in the middle of the driveway out here? And his employee had enough foresight to go and get a measuring stick, a measuring ruler, and take pictures of these footprints. And I reached out to him months later and asked him to I reached out to the owner after I found out who it was, and he didn't want anything to do with me. And but he said, you can call back at this number at 7:30 in the morning and you can talk to John. And I did, and John texted me the pictures a year later, apparently the gentleman passed away and they auctioned off his property, so I went there to the auction to buy some stuff, and I met this young man that sent me these pictures. And like I said earlier, I become the center of the universe for any of these. Fortunately, I got these. I would have liked to have gone cast it. That's the only thing I don't have is a footprint cast in Chautauqua County. I've had a couple of people reach out to me on I've Seen Bigfoot Facebook page. A guy reached out to me I believe from up in Minnesota. Right. He falls down while he's snowboarding, and he hears a laugh, and he looks, and he sees a Bigfoot shimming up a tree with what looked to be deer skin or rabbit skin socks or moccasins or whatever you want to say. They were wrapped around his feet as protection. And he's shimmying up the tree. I've never heard of a report ever seeing anything like this. He's the only one. And he's shimmying up a tree, and he got to the top of the tree, and you would have never been able to realize he was there, he said, unless he knew that it was climbing up the tree. And it still freaks him out. He writes, then I had another gentleman from Scandia, Pennsylvania, down near the Allegheny National Forest, who feeds 2 or 3 Bigfoots pizza on Friday nights. He says he has copyrighted photos, and I said share them. I said if you think you're going to make money on Bigfoot, you're dreaming. I said share them and maybe you'll get some fame or something. But a lady reached out to me at the beginning of 2012 that feeds them dog food off of her acre or 2 or 3 acres of land that borders 1,000 acres of state land over by Panama. But then she clammed up instantly. They don't want their backyard turned into a circus. They realize. And I said, well, why don't you just invite me? And let me come and enjoy it, you know? I mean, here's a couple of insights I have. You know, like the people that have a constant visit, you know, there always seems to be an excuse why not to bring people on to the property. Oh, it'll be a circus. Even if you go, hey, it'll just be me, nobody else. No, we don't want it to be a circus. To me, there's something there. I mean, I think they're just trying to pull your leg or give themselves a greater importance sometimes. So there's a guy with the pizza that feeds them regularly pizza. I have I'm very good knowledge from a very reliable source. In fact, we've had this person on as a guest on our show before, Bruce Hallenbeck. Well, his grandmother back in the 80s, they were having a big flap of sightings called the Kinderhook creature. And the funny thing is the only thing they would put out chicken. They would put it on an 8-foot pole. He took the birdhouse down, and Bruce would put out a chicken. And the next morning, they'd find the chicken bones in the yard, the chicken all pulled apart. He would put, steak or whatever. The only thing they didn't like was pizza. So they don't know. Right? And does that make sense, though? Makes a lot of sense because the chicken wasn't cooked, neither was the steak, but the pizza was cooked. And it's almost like it didn't kind of recognize this as food. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, why would you bait a Sasquatch in New York with oranges? You would New York, you would bait them with apples. Conversely, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So the whole idea of feeding them pizza on a regular basis sounds kind of like somebody's either one pulling your leg or two trying to make themselves self-elevated, and that's something I've always gone to some of these shows with a little air of caution. And I think there is one particular woman that comes there every year that has this photo album of all these Bigfoot, but they're all cloaked. And
I know.
Yeah,
I know
you know
exactly
exactly
what
what
you're
I'm
talking
talking
about.
about.
I
And
know.
she will drive you-
And you got to feel for them because they believe something,
Right. Yep.
But the
It's
people
just-
that have really seen them, the people that have, come and talk to us, Steve, you know when they walk up there, when they walk away. They didn't walk up there to try to hoax us. I mean, that's what, there's a lot of hoaxers out there, but these people, it took a lot of nerve just to come up and talk. Andrew,
right.
Amanda,
you see a lot of reluctance for them to come up, and that's the biggest thing.
I did a library tour in Silver Creek, which is on the northern part of Chautauqua County, February 26th, and we had 2 eyewitnesses from Chautauqua County, one from Alabama, the state of Alabama. Mm-hmm. And the one lady from Chautauqua County and her husband, no name, no, specifics, generality, someplace between where Amanda saw it and that Scandia, Pennsylvania area. That's only a bunch of territory, But But I could tell she was relieved at the end of the evening that she came because she got closure. She realized that they're probably real. They're probably not. I don't believe. I think the more aggressive Bigfoots they say are in Texas. They're probably everywhere, but maybe around here, the eyewitness accounts. I had one lady call me up on the telephone, and again, it was in the first year. She was ecstatic. Her aunt had called her and told her there was this ad in the local penny saver that, have you seen Bigfoot? Call us. We want to talk to you. And so she said it was 1967. It was over near Panama in one of the state forests over there. She was 14. Her brother and sister were 13 and 12. And that they were sitting on a picnic table, and 20, 30 feet away, a Bigfoot was sitting in the woods, and they watched each other for 15 minutes. And then the kids got up and went home. It was a little family secret ever since then. Well, my son swims in Panama from Chautauqua Lake. He's a senior this year, Chautauqua Lake. Everybody's merging sports and stuff, so Chautauqua Lake, they swim at Panama. And I dropped my son off at swim practice, and then I went over to the post office in Panama, and it must have been during the Sportsman show. And so I had postcards, 4x6 cards, promoting the upcoming Bigfoot shows at the Sportsman shows. And the lady at the post office, because I gave her one, says, "Oh, so-and-so says herself and her brother and sister saw one." And it must have been the same one. And I said to the lady, I said, "Here's an extra card. When you see her, please ask her to share it." I try to tell them, it's not anything that anybody's profiting from. It kind of gives them a way of recording their history so that they can leave it with their kids who are probably still doubting that their mom and dad in 1967 saw a Bigfoot. Yeah. And that's the only place I can come from in trying to relieve some anxiety in these people that truly believe. Yeah.
We have a caller, so let's pop the caller on real quick. So,
thank you.
Caller from the 814 area code. You're on Squatchdetective Radio.
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Hey, who's this? Ted, what a guy.
Hey, I only got a couple minutes because I'm in the middle of a few things here. I got to close up before I hit the hay, but I just want to bring to your attention again the gentleman that you had come from over by Philadelphia. who was the radio talk show host. What was his name over there? He was at the camp. He gave a real good speech. He drove all the way from like Philadelphia.
Tony Merkel.
Tony.
Tony.
I'll tell you what.
Yep.
That was the most impressive speech I have ever seen at one of your Bigfoot conventions.
Well, you shouldn't say that on Steve's radio show.
Well,
because Steve has been. Tony's great. Doug Waller is great. Steve Calls is phenomenal. And
Tony is phenomenal as well. I mean, I know
and
Tony Merkel.
Yep.
Right,
Tony is to Pennsylvania.
I just wanted to say about all the data that he had presented when he was in the woods. He showed the barriers that were all there protecting the Bigfoot.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't know if you recall that or not, but he had it all laid out in like a stage of a mile. He had different barricades. Then he had those trees that were built like teepees, where he felt like the Bigfoot was planting them. And then also he was putting the trees, huge trees, like about a foot wide, that were probably 20 feet tall, up and down in the holes in the woods there.
Wow. Now, everybody, Ted is my Apple guru kind of guy. He's a Apple school teacher for a big school district of 3 or 4 schools in Pennsylvania, south of Erie. He takes care of all their Apple computers, and then he comes and rents boats for me in the spring, summer, and fall.
Cool.
And he helps, and Ted helps for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years at the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo. And so, Ted, I thank you so much for calling in and mentioning
Absolutely.
Tony.
Absolutely.
You know,
I just want to say, too, that I think your Bigfoot convention keeps getting better every year. And I think last year was probably one of the best ones that you put on.
I wasn't there.
It was good. Steve called.
Steve, you need to show back up.
He's coming this year. It's all there. Steve Call is to this Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, you know, just like Larry was, just like Bob Gimlin in 2013 and Tom Yamarone. They're priceless. And now we got Seth Breedlove. You know, I've had Seth there the last 2 years, and I've become a friend of Seth's, and he is a movie maker of biblical proportions in the Bigfoot and paranormal world. If you go to smalltownmonsters.com, you're going to see his repertoire of movies that he is what I want to be. I wish I was a movie maker of biblical proportions like Seth is. And I know other people wish they could own a cottage resort. and you know, I got my real job and I got my real life, but you know, these guys that can make a living at making movies like, you know, Steven Spielberg or all these famous people, Seth Breedlove deserves to be mentioned in the same sentence.
Yeah, he does do a real bang-up job.
Well, he does, you know. And
I have to get going, Peter.
Ted, thank you for calling, my friend.
Ted. All right. Hey,
thanks, Ted.
You got an awesome show going here, and keep it all good.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
You too, Ted.
All right. So that was awesome. So thank you, Ted, for calling in.
You know Ted, Steve.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
is the one that looks like Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
No, everybody knows who Ted looks like because, and he's you know, we've been friends for a long time, so it's all great.
Well, it's always good to have somebody calling in and backing up some of the things our guests say. I mean, it's just part of the whole deal. So
I want to say,
okay.
Doug Waller is a huge part of our Bigfoot Expo as well. And Doug Waller has a huge following there in southeastern Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
he sure does.
Just like, I know, I should.
What?
I should let you take over your own show. I shouldn't intervene too many times.
No.
But I wanted to.
You're the guest. People come to this show to hear the guest, not to. They hear me babble every week.
All right. Well, Steve Coles had my name spelled correctly once tonight, but he pronounces it incorrectly. My real name is pronounced Peter Wiemer. Even though it's spelled Peter Wiemer. My dad always told me as I was growing up I never pronounced our last name correctly. And so it was an in-family joke that when you introduced me tonight, Steve, as Peter Wiemer, all my friends, if they were listening in, they were laughing. They were saying, I know Peter always says it's Wiemer. But
the problem is, if you take your name in Deutsch, that is how you say Weimer. If you take it, I spelt it like Weimer in German originally. That's why it kind of.
You did, remember, and they misspelled my children's name in the sports columns of the Post-Journal newspaper here, and I said, kids, I'm used to it. They misspelled my name wrong. They misspelled my children's names wrong. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's small potatoes. And, you can teach them to pick your fights. That's one that you don't have to pick,
Oh, you would be surprised how confused people get with my name. Steve Coles. Oh, is that Coles? No, that's Coles.
Yeah, I only know how to spell it. Kullllls. You got to throw about 3 more L's in there, Steve, and then that helps.
Yeah.
But
that'll work.
Hey, Steve, up where you're at, do you get when you get Bigfoot sightings? Do they reach out to you, or do they reach out to a BFRO person, or what happens up in your area?
Well, a lot of people don't know. I am a BFRO investigator too, so I have both. People come to my website, give me sightings, and at times I'll get them through the BFRO site as well. So,
and BFRO stands for
the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization.
Yeah. And is that that's headed up by Matt Moneymaker?
It is. Really, it's to me, it's more of a. Truthfully, a lot of people think it's more of it's just a database. Really, it really helps us get boots on the ground and get these reports. So it's been a real asset. It's not like I have to, or anybody necessarily has to report back to anybody. We just take the information, do it if it's credible. We pass it. We hit the publish button, and we add our own comments into that, and that's that. So it's really. I enjoy it because that was created by Matt Moneymaker, and there was another gentleman too. I believe his name was Ron Schaffner originally back in the mid '90s, and Ron Schaffner was from Ohio. I believe at the time Matt was in Ohio as well. So.
Yeah.
But that was a little before, believe it or not, that was a little before my time.
Yeah, I want to go back to a little earlier, Steve, where Peter was talking about the witnesses coming up to him, and they're kind of gathering up on him here. But, Peter, you had mentioned earlier that you thought maybe the people were coming to you for some sort of closure, But I was wondering, what do you think? Do you think could it be acceptance or approval or affirmation, or are they just looking, or maybe one or all?
Affirmation. They and I've heard of other eyewitnesses that haven't talked to me, and I wish they would. They I think the bottom line is that they just come and they want to get some kind of closure, that they realize that whatever they saw was real, that, as we talk about it, I mean, are you afraid of them? Probably. They're bigger than us. I mean, we don't know if they'll attack us. We don't know a lot of stuff about them. But, I mean, like I tell everybody, that since it's not a listed species to hunt, you cannot kill a Bigfoot.
Right.
When I first posed the question to the New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, to come up and give me a sentence or a line or a paragraph as to why they should not protect the species, they said, first of all, if it's not a listed species for hunt, you can't kill it. And that's what every hunter, that's what every person should think about, period. Then when I pushed them a little bit, then the commissioner at the time had the chief wildlife biologist write me a letter. That's also on my website at bigfootexpo.com. Basically states in so many words that the state of New York will not write a law of protection based on a mythical animal. And they basically wished me well in so many words, but told me that Bigfoots don't exist anywhere in the world. Well, the Houston, the Houston Chronicle took that. When I got that letter, I held it up and showed it, and I said, this is the best national press release that I could have ever asked for, and I did. And Houston Chronicle at the time wrote an article saying they didn't like New York State telling Texas that they didn't have Bigfoots because Texas knows they have Bigfoots. And ever since then, you will not get the New York State DEC to ever answer a question about Bigfoot. I'll bet you $5.
Well,
and I know.
And Peter, I agree, and that kind of relates to something, because I read on the internet, and I wanted to ask you about this. That I read on the internet somewhere that you had written a letter to President Obama at the time, and had requested that he recognize it, or the United States recognize the species. Is that true?
Yeah. Did Barry ever get back to you?
I wrote him a letter. I tracked it. I sent it a priority. Priority envelope, a big, not a big envelope, not a box, but I sent them everything. I sent them posters, cars. I sent them, and I could track it, and I saw that it was sent back to another place for security reasons. But he finally did get it, but he did not ever reply.
Oh man!
And I Googled Bigfoot sightings in the state of Hawaii, and I'm not, there's just like Steve Culls, and he is on my YouTube video that I've cut loose from the 2012 Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, and it is at bigfootexpo.com, of Steve explaining the worldwide phenomenon of Bigfoot and what it's called in different countries around the world. And Steve, you're priceless. I mean, you add so much credibility to the argument that Bigfoot's real. Obviously, the first Bigfoot documented sighting in a newspaper, per reported by you in this video, and that I refer to all the time, was in a newspaper in Sackett's Harbor, New York, in 1818. They were seen on the East Coast long before the West Coast because the East Coast was settled first. When people realize that, and they hear it from you, Steve, it gives it more credence. It's history we can't make up. We can't go back and fudge and hoax newspaper documented history. And that's why even my local newspaper, the Post-Journal, which slammed me, saying that, basically that Bigfoots don't exist, and whatever Peter's opinion is his own, trying to make me look stupid. And they don't recognize the history of their own news industry. Because I didn't ask those people to hoax. There's nobody hoaxing anybody. That those people are documented sightings in a newspaper article, and it should be taken as historical evidence. And
Well, I think the skeptics, their whole argument is that, Bigfoot started in like 1957. That's it. But we can go back and point to back to 1800s, of sighting reports, and that's well before 1957.
Oh yeah,
Well.
That 1818 newspaper article of Bigfoot sighting outside of Sackett's Harbor, New York, but put in the Sackett's Harbor, New York newspaper, is the earliest newspaper documented sighting. And nobody could have been hoaxed, of a wild man.
Yeah. Wild man covered in reddish brown hair. And, it goes on and on. I mean, there was I believe it was 1879 in Powell, Vermont, where two youths were out hunting, and they saw a wild man covered in reddish brown hair. It caused them to drop their guns and run back home. They left their guns in the woods. And you will hear Paul Bartholomew, who's really up on that stuff as well, speak about Jonas Galusha, who was governor of Vermont, and he was elected on the ticket vowing to hunt down and capture the wild man, believe it or not.
No, but Steve, you got it all wrong, man. No. That didn't. Even though that happened prior to 1957, it was actually the results of 1957 is why that happened. It was time travel or something, because Bigfoot and hoaxing. Yeah, Bigfoot and hoaxing didn't begin until 1957, so there's only valid, hoaxing after that.
Well, which leads me to the point was, as a lot of people know, and it actually was 58 that Jerry Krewitz found the new type of Sasquatch called Bigfoot, and then there was the Ray Wallace death and finding those. And the funny thing is, if you read papers, they will say that, oh wow, Bigfoot must really get around. He must have a good travel agent. Well, because finding sightings here, sightings there, but yet they don't say that about Ray Wallace, like tracks found in Pennsylvania, tracks found in New York, tracks found in the Carolinas. So, I
even
know.
If Ray was stamping out tracks, he would have had to been a busy traveling man to do them in every state. It just doesn't seem likely.
So Peter, as I talk a lot about, and I've seen Bigfoot, and you make a good point about all these witnesses come forward and why some of them are reluctant. Remember, I always said that there is a trauma associated with a lot of people seeing a Bigfoot, especially if they do not believe in them.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of the reason why you have that almost reluctance. Even though you're a believer and they expect you, they may expect you to believe it, there's still that internal fear. But you're right. Once they do expunge that from their system, just like any victim of trauma, be it a family crime or a general crime, once they get that off their chest, it's a great relief. One of the guys, his name is Dave Groves, and Dave's been doing the radio show circuit for a while now. But I remember, I forget exactly what year, it might have been 2013, 2012. He was at the Cabela's event that they ran every year in West Virginia. And I encouraged him to come forward and talk about it in front of the crowd. And he says to me every time I see him that was probably the best thing he could have ever done because he got it off his chest. So,
and that's something.
So that's really a good selling point to if people come forward, and they're kind of reluctant. Listen, I understand your apprehension, but if you talk to it in front of these people, which are going to accept your story, you're going to feel like you've let a great weight off your chest, and you can do it totally anonymously. I've
got this old lady that has come up the last couple of 3 years to the Expo, and I don't have her name in front of me right now, Steve, so I apologize, but she's a sweetheart. She saw a Bigfoot. Her family rented a cottage on the lake 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 6 years ago, and she gets up early in the morning, like 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. And she got up that morning at 4:30, and she looks outside and she sees this log in front of their cottage in the lake. And I asked her how long she was engaged with this, and she said 4 minutes. She watches this. And as she's focusing on it, she decides to go outside and try to see a little bit closer, and then the log starts swimming away, and she realizes it's a Bigfoot. And I told her, I said, why don't you just come and let us video you and tell your story, and that's the history you're going to tell your kids, because she's told her family and they don't believe her, but she truly believes. And that it seems to be down a creek. It could be it could be there's DeWittville Creek, Pendergast Creek, and one other main feeder creek on Chautauqua Lake.
So she's
and she might have been at the end of that.
So she's relatively close to where the Expo is, correct?
Oh yeah, she's on this lake. She saw it.
So here's my thing.
Lakeside.
If she's still reluctant, my guess is she's going to show up at the Expo. She may not tell her story. That's fine.
She comes every year.
Right. What I'd love to do is for you to hook her up with me.
Okay.
And we will talk, and maybe I can convince her to have me take a look-see with you. And we'll see what we can do about that. And I think that,
I mean, it's another example of somebody that needs some closure. She just needs to be reaffirmed that what she saw was genuine, and that, and if we can leave some kind of history for her to leave for her kids, because they obviously are still telling her, "Oh, Mom, you're crazy." I mean, it's. I've heard it so many times now, Steve. It's too bad. It's sad that people would ridicule a family member that might have seen a Bigfoot, and then I get the constant hunter that says, "Oh, I've been in the woods 40 years. I would have seen one by now." Well, maybe you weren't looking. I tell people to look. They got to drink a lot of water, so they're going to leave footprints or along creeks or waterways. And a hunter's looking for something different. They're not looking. Yeah. I mean, maybe they are, but maybe they look at a footprint. I know there's a lot of hunters that have told me that they've heard stuff. They don't know what it's about. They know it's not anything that they've ever. It's just and one's a principal of a major school district here in Chautauqua County.
Yeah. So wow.
And the thing about the hunters are that those guys are sportsmen, and they're not going to shoot something that they don't know exactly what it is.
Exactly.
And so
thank God.
Even right. And the hunters that know, they see it.
Because if they think they're going to get a deal, I heard there was a roadkill in Pennsylvania 2.5, 3 years ago, and the DNR came and took the body away, and the eyewitnesses said, what about the Bigfoot? And the DNR agent said, what Bigfoot? Yeah. So no matter whether you get a picture of a body, it doesn't matter. The government will not acknowledge their existence.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. Don't try to prove it. Just live with it and try to accept it. That's the only way I try to tell people, because they're not going to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Hey, guys, guess
Peter,
what time
you
it is?
About those... Oh, no, you're kidding. Really? Already?
We are ticking down to just under, just about 4 minutes left to show.
Have I got time for one more question?
Absolutely. Fire away, Chris.
Well, Peter, I wanted to know, after you had your sighting, did it change you in any way? I mean, and how you look at nature now, or the outdoors, or being outdoors?
No. I got a little bit of closure myself in believing that I saw something that honest to God, I mean, I can't believe that I would have gone home, dumped the trailer, picked up my kayak, come back if I wasn't so resolved in my own mind that I saw it.
Yeah.
But no, I want to see it closer. I want to see it better. I want to see it. I want to get a footprint cast, and then I'll have closure. You know.
There you go.
Cool.
I don't care. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Well, we got to wrap up. Peter, I want to thank you for coming on tonight, especially on short notice. And it was great conversation. As Chris mentioned, how quick the time flew by. You know.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Steve Calls for coming to our 7th annual Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo, or BigfootExpo.com. I want to thank Doug Waller, Paul Matea, Seth Breedlove, and of course Paul Bartholomew for coming this year. So everybody, if you're not doing anything, come to the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo weekend, October 12th and 13th. If you're not staying at We Want You, you can't be partying with Steve Calls.
That's right. I'll be doing a little salute.
At the nightly lakefront bonfire or in the swimming pool. Thank you,
that's right.
Steve.
You're welcome, brother, especially in the swimming pool. Or my midnight serenade at the campfire.
You know it.
All right, folks. Well, guess what? Chris, you and I are not back again. Thank you, Peter. You and I are not back until April 8th.
Right.
Yeah. Because obviously next week I have another obligation, so I'll be on the road.
Right. And then we got Easter coming up.
And we have Easter, so everybody have a wonderful Easter.
Yeah.
Our prayers are with Seth, of course. And, folks, we'll be back here on April 8th with Pennsylvania Cryptozoological Society's Eric Altman. And he's always great, got a lot of stuff on the plate, as always. So we'll catch you all here April 8th. I want everybody between now and then to have a great, safe, healthy weeks ahead of us. Everybody have a great Easter. And on behalf of me and Chris, everybody, God bless, keep in good health, and keep on squatching. We'll see you all in a few weeks.
Thank you for listening to Squatch Detective Radio. Join us each week on Blog Talk Radio, Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern, as your hosts, veteran Bigfoot researchers, Steve Culls and Chris Bennett, bring you guests from around North America, exploring the mystery of the beast known as Bigfoot.